Hello, friends. Good morning. My name is Dustin Jones. This is Jerry on Ice. Every Wednesday, we're talking about how we can better serve older adults. I teach modern management of the older adult with my partner in crime, Christina Previtt. Our next cohort for that online 8-week course starts September 23rd. Good morning, Allie. We're really excited about this course and just how it's evolved and changed as we've gathered feedback from some of the other students. And we got a pretty good product here. I'm really excited about it. So that's September 23rd. There's going to be a link in the Facebook post here. But then we also have a few online courses lined up, which is pretty crazy to think about. So we're going to be in St. Louis in December. We're going to be in Wyoming in February, I believe, and then we're going to be out in South Dakota in March. So if y'all are around there, check out the website, see if you want to join. But today I wanted to talk about power. We talk a lot about strength on this podcast. We've mentioned power a good bit, but this kind of stems from a discussion that was in the Senior Rehab Project Facebook group. So Cody Sipe, he's with the Functional Aging Institute, put in one of his presentations, he dropped in the PDF that generated a lot of good discussion about power training, because for the longest time, a lot of the discussion has been about strength. Let's get people strong as possible. And that equates to, a longer life, but a higher quality of life, which in many, research studies is definitely, that's been shown to be the case. But we may have been ignoring that element of power, the ability to generate force quickly, not just the ability to generate a lot of force, but how fast we can do it. And so he, had a great argument, a great presentation about how we should maybe shift our focus more towards that power element than just pure strength. There's tons of studies that kind of show the importance of power when compared to strength. I'm just going to mention a couple here. Bean in 2002 found that the relationship between leg power and physical performance in community-dwelling older adults was stronger for leg power than just for leg strength. So the physical performance in the community, power was more of an important factor than just overall strength. And then Reed and Fielding in 2012, they found that muscle power is a more discriminate predictor of functional performance in older adults than muscle strength. So they looked at some of the functional measures that we talk about on this podcast, like the tug, the 5 times sit to stand, things of that nature. That power, was a more important factor. So that's something that really, should force us to pause to think. How are we, implementing power training with our older adult patients? And I want you to think about that, because we do need to generate a lot of force. We need people to be strong, but in reality, they need to be able to generate that force quickly on demand in case they lose their balance, if they may fall, if they may need to react to whatever, situation they find themselves in out in the community. That's a very, very important thing they need to be able to do. So if we're going to implement power training, some very basic things that you can do today with your patients that you can already just tweak a little bit of the current, exercise that you're probably performing. Good morning, Laura. So the first thing is the concentric phase of an exercise. You can just focus that explosive nature of that movement. So let's say you're doing a goblet squat, with your patient. They're maybe sitting up from a chair, holding, a 12-pound kettlebell, for example. Emphasize that explosiveness to come up quickly and maybe come down slow. That right there in and of itself is a very fundamental form of power training. So you can do that with almost any of the exercises that you're already doing to build strength with your patients, but you can also build that power. You probably want to lighten the load. 20 to 60% of a 1 rep max is kind of the accepted range if you're going to go based on that dosage, because you want them to be able to generate that force quickly and not struggle to move quickly if it's too heavy. So what movements do you want to do? Because you can do some of the kind of simple exercises that a lot of us will do with our older adult patients, but there's one thing, and I hinted towards it in the title, that I want to really hit on with older adults. I've never heard of it talked with older adults, but it's usually in the world of human performance, of sprinting, of Olympic lifting, and that's the term of triple extension. So this term, it's kind of controversial in the human performance realm because it's kind of been overhyped for many, many years. But it's basically when we are extending our hips, we're extending our knees, and we're plantar flexing our ankles almost all at once. I mean, there's some variation in terms of the timing, but when you are generating force quickly and extending the hips, extending the knees, and plantar flexing the ankles, you're commonly going to see this in a power clean, for example, for those barbell fans. We have a lot of them on this podcast. Triple extension is a major, force driver to be able to perform that movement. But that can correlate to many functional activities in our daily life. And if we train that movement, triple extension, then that's going to have a great correlation to improve, that power that's actually practical for someone in their day-to-day life. So I want to break this down and just kind of talk through how I'm thinking about this with my patients, that, how can we get to this point of performing some of these higher level activities? So first, with older adults, we always want to consider their mobility, because it's almost always an issue with a lot of my patients. I mean, I'm a home health therapist, so I'm kind of, I may be different from some of you outpatient folk, but I mean, I don't want to generalize, but most of my patients have limited ankle dorsiflexion. I'd say a good bit of them can get, full knee extension, and almost all of them have limited hip extension. So if it is a pure mobility issue, that may be tough to challenge. Good morning, Justin. But it may be a stability issue, and we can tease that out and potentially improve that. But from what I've found, I have not been able to find great gains in mobility with a lot of my homebound older adults. Not to say that's not going to be the case for you all in outpatient. Keep trying to improve their mobility. Keep working on that ankle dorsiflexion. But for me and their patterns of life, it's been rather challenging. So like Christina said, it was a while back about that SOC concept, the selection optimization compensation. A lot of times I'm going to compensate for their mobility issues, and that's most often with their limited ankle dorsiflexion. So to perform some of these activities that involve triple extension, you do need some dorsiflexion. If you're going to perform, some type of squat pattern, or, some type of, prowler, you're trying to, sprint per se. You need some ankle dorsiflexion. So a lot of times we'll just get a different type of shoe or get a heel lift that's going to make things a little easier, so they can get that range of motion and not have to, stress their toes, for example, going into hyperextension if they don't have that dorsiflexion. So I'll have to say, look at their mobility, improve it if you're able to, if you need to, but you can compensate as well. And oftentimes that's going to mean helping out with their ankle, dorsiflexion with some type of heel lift. You can start with isolated strength training. So a lot of my patients, significant deficits, sometimes bilaterally, not always, in some of these movements. So oftentimes I'll start with isolated strength training, with heel raises, long arm quads. Yeah, I'll use long arm quads, weighted bridges, some of those things to improve that hip extension, knee extension, and ankle plantar flexion. One thing with the bridges, though, is with a lot of my patients, they have very limited hip extension. So instead of doing it on a flat surface, you may want to do a weighted bridge when, their back may be on some type of bench. For me, it's typically, their couch, to where you can put some type of plate on their waist, dumbbell, something along those lines, or a band to resist that hip extension. That's going to be really helpful for them to start to get the ball rolling to improve that strength. So from there, after, they've kind of, you've maximized their mobility, they are building strength in some of those isolated movements, and we can put it all together to really train that triple extension. There's 3 activities that I've found, really helpful and practical for a lot of my older adult patients that I don't think are going to be very intimidating for you to implement today if you wanted to. So the first one is going to be a med ball toss from a chair, or you can do it from a squat pattern. So a lot of times for me, that's going to look like, we train their sit to stand. They get pretty comfortable with that. We may try and lower the chair surface if we can. And then after they're pretty stable, they're not losing their balance, they're feeling pretty comfortable, I'll give them a pillow. So they'll, come up out of the chair quickly and then toss the pillow, and I'll step back further and further and further. And as they're doing really well with that, then we'll throw in a medicine ball, and then we'll gradually increase the weight with that to where they're doing an explosive sit to stand, throwing that med ball, but emphasizing that hip extension, knee extension, And then if they're stable enough to really try and, come up off their heels, to really focus on that triple extension pattern. So a med ball toss can be really helpful and relatively safe. I haven't had any issues with that in the home, but try that one out. The second one, a prowler, which I know may not necessarily be practical for a lot of people with, a tight space. Not very practical for me in home health, but a prowler sled could be awesome for you to really, improve power. For me, I've never used a prowler sled with older adults. If I was an outpatient, I'd definitely be fighting for that. But what happens with me is I end up sitting on their rollator, or I'm pushing against their walker, or using some type of band to resist their forward motion. And really emphasizing the speed of that with a little bit of resistance, you're really training power in there, getting into that triple extension position. So a prowler sled, if you have one, great. If not, you can improvise. Use a rollator walker. You can resist that, or even resist at their waist. And last but not least, landmine presses. So this is where typically you'll take a barbell, put it in a corner of a room, or they have that actual barbell hold that you can weight the other end of the barbell, and you're standing and you're kind of holding it, and you can press it up and down with one hand, two hands. You can go from shoulder to shoulder, but you can do a lot of really cool stuff with a landmine press. What I've often used is a weighted PVC pipe. So I'll take ankle weights, put it around a PVC pipe, probably cover the other end of the PVC pipe and put it in the corner of someone's room, and we'll just get after it. And what you can do is, use a squat pattern, really explode up, and then they can, push with their arms. And the great thing about a landmine press, you don't need full shoulder range of motion to be able to benefit from it. So a lot of our patients are going to have limited shoulder flexion, for example. You can only, get up to, 110 and be perfectly fine, and do a landmine press and put some weight on it, and really train, their power with that. So consider some of those options. You could do so much more, but these are three that I felt, were comfortable for me to perform in the home, but something that you all could try today with your patients. That's the med ball toss from a chair or a squat. You can do a prowler sled or resist their ambulation. If they have a walker, you can still resist their forward momentum. And then a landmine press, whether you actually have the full setup with the barbell in your clinic, or you want to improvise with a PVC pipe or a dowel rod, with some type of ankle weight. So those are three simple ideas. Try it out. These are pretty low risk activities, if you ask me, and you can get a lot of bang for your buck. The last thing I do want to mention, though, is with power training, specifically with older adults. If you can incorporate an element of reaction with that is going to be very beneficial, because we want to be able to generate force quickly. But for a lot of times with older adults that need to generate force in the real life situation, they need to generate that force quickly based on some type of information they process, as in they lost their balance and they need to regain their balance so they don't have a fall. So if you can incorporate some type of reactionary component and not just say knock out 20 reps of this landmine press, but maybe call out numbers, 2, 3, or maybe it's a med ball toss that you are having them toss the ball to your hand out here, if it's light enough. If it's too heavy, that'd be tough to catch a med ball out here. But change the location that they're throwing the medicine ball to. Or you could use something like the Clock Yourself app that we talked about a lot, that Meg Lowry in Australia has developed, that you can do weighted stepping, for example. So be creative with how you can incorporate that reactionary component, because you're going to be benefiting the patient tremendously, not just from the power standpoint, from also their reaction time, which really matters in the real world. So that's all I got. Try those things. If you have any other ideas about how to build power with this triple extension position or motion, drop your comment in the Facebook post. It'll be interesting to see how you all implement some of this stuff in the clinic, in the home, in the hospital, wherever you're practicing. So before I leave, Modern Management of the Older Adult, September 23rd is when the next online course starts. 8 weeks, 16 CEUs. We have a bi-weekly meeting. We have weekly assignments, good discussion. We dive into some of these concepts that we talk about here on PT on Ice. So if you would love to join, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, but I'll put a link in the show notes. So I hope you all have a lovely day. If you're in South Carolina or North Carolina, be safe. Allie, I see you watching here. That Hurricane Florence is no joke. So I hope you all are safe and able to withstand all the rain and the craziness that's about to happen down there. So y'all take care. I'll talk to you in a couple weeks.